Good morning, second graders. Today we are going to continue to learn about graphs. You will need a pencil and some scratch paper for this. If you have paper that has lines on it, that's probably the best. But if you don't, that's okay too. I'm going to show you some examples of what it looks like without lines as well. Our objective is we can and we will use data to create bar graphs. So we're going to be looking at the same data we've used the past couple days. We've already made a tally chart, we've already made a picture graph, and today we're going to be making a bar graph. So let's go back and review our graph from yesterday. Remember, this is a picture graph. Some important parts of it are the fact that we have a title that tells what the graph is about, category labels or titles that show what each category we are counting are, and then a key. Remember, keys are super important because it shows us what this picture stands for. So each picture stands for one animal. So if we have 4 circles, that means 4 animals. Now, we kind of touched on this a little bit yesterday, but when we turn it sideways, let's look at the graph. We can easily see which one it has the most and which one has the least. This is another way of looking at picture graphs or bar graphs. They can be either horizontal or vertical. And does the data change if we turn it sideways? No. We had 8 mammals here. When we turn it sideways, we still have 8 mammals. True, so we're learning some interesting things about graphs. We can change the position of the graph from vertical to horizontal or horizontal to vertical, and the data still stays the same. So today, like I said, we're going to make a bar graph using the same data from our animal classification table. Remember, it goes, there was 4 birds, 8 mammals, 5 reptiles, and 3 fish. For our graph to make sense to someone who's reading it, it needs to have a title. What's the title of our chart going to be? Animal classification. We're showing the same information that we did yesterday and the day before, just in a different way, so the title isn't going to change. It will stay exactly the same. Fill in the title the same way I do. Okay, so I want you to pause here. You're going to create a graph. What it needs to have is a spot for the title to say animal classification. It needs to have an area for 4 categories, and these little lines underneath, I want you to have 12. I'm going to show you the one that I created as well because that will help you if you don't have graph paper at home. So here you go. I just drew a big box. I made sure I had 12 equally spaced little lines at the bottom, 4 lines for my categories, and 1 line for my title. So please make sure that you pause right now and create a graph that looks similar to this so you can work with us through this lesson. Great work. Everyone should have their graph now. Now, how many categories of animals did we classify? Think back to what we just looked at. There were 4 categories. So let's label those same 4 categories in the same order on the bar graph that we did for the picture graph and the tally chart. So you're going to put bird, mammal, reptile, and fish. Here's my example if you're looking at that one. Bird, mammal, reptile, fish. Pause to do that, please. When you're ready, you can hit play. Okay, and how do we record the number of animals on the table? We use tally marks on the table. And how do we represent the number of each animal on the picture graph? We drew a picture, right? So each circle represents an animal. So we have to think about how we're going to do that for the bar graph. So watch how we represent data on a bar graph. First, you have to fill in the scale. Say that word with me, it's really important. Scale. I'm even going to underline it to show this is an important word that we need to know. Okay, scale. Scale is the number we are counting by. So, are we counting by 1s, 2s, 5s, 10s, and so on? If you're working with bigger numbers, you could even be counting by hundreds or thousands or millions. When we go back to our picture graph, each circle stood for 1, so we're counting by 1s. We're counting 1, 2, 3. If we were counting by 5s, each circle might stand for 5, and we would count by 5s like 5, 10, 15. But we're really going to be focusing on counting by 1s. All right. So since we are counting by 1s, we are going to fill in 1 through 12, counting by ones, on the bottom. So just like I did here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way up to 12. Notice that each number lines up with a line in your graph. On here, sorry, I went back to the wrong one. On here, I just made sure that they were equally spaced because I wanted each one to stand for 1, so each one should all have the same equal amount of space. So I did 1 through 12 all the way down to the bottom. So pause and do that so it looks like mine. The scale tells us that each box equals 1. So how many boxes should we color in for the bird category? So a bird has 4, so we're going to color in 4 boxes in the bird row. So it looks something like this. So if you have lines, you should color in up to 4. If you don't have lines, the way that I like to do this is I use a ruler or a straight piece of paper and I just go up to where this 4 is and I just hold my paper until I see exactly where the 4 is and I mark a little line and then draw my bar. So the 4 here should be equal with the 4 down here. Pause to do that. Color in how many boxes in the mammal row. Look at your chart. We should have said 8 boxes in the mammal row. 5, 6, 7, 8. And then you can go and do the same thing to your chart. Remember, if you're using boxes, like a graph paper, you can color in 8 boxes. If not, just go up to where your 8 ends, mark a little line, and draw your bar. Color in blank boxes in the reptile row. Let's look at our chart. We have 5. So I colored in 5 boxes in the reptile row. Pause, do that now. Lastly, color blank boxes in the fish row. Shout it out if you know it. We are coloring in 3 boxes in the fish row. Awesome. So your chart, if you're drawing it, could look something like mine. I was really careful to make sure I was exactly where each number ended at the bottom to show my scale and make sure my chart was accurate. Something else I did since I don't have the boxes and I can't count them here, I like to put the little number at the end of my bar. I forgot to do it for mammals here, but I put a 4 after birds, so I know this is 4. 5 after reptiles, so I know those are 5, and 3 after fish, so I know those are 3. So I want you guys to pause right now and complete your graph, make sure it looks similar to mine right now. So now we can use our graphs to answer some questions. These are similar to our questions yesterday. How many more? How many fewer? So we're going to be using a lot of subtraction. If we're asking us to add up the total amount of animals, we'll do addition. This question says, how many more mammals than reptiles are there? Okay, so I'm going to try this out. I'm going to use my pen tool here. And I'm going to say how many more mammals than reptiles are there. So there are 8 mammals, so 8. And reptiles, there are 5. So I'm going to do mammals minus reptiles. 5 minus 8 equals 3. So, correct, there are 3 more mammals than there are reptiles. I'm going to be solving these here, but I would like you to pause and try and solve them before I do, if possible. Okay, our next question says, how many fewer birds than reptiles are there? Okay, so I want you to pause and try and solve that on your own, and then press play when you're ready to check your answer against mine. All right, how many fewer birds than reptiles are there? So fewer is the one that comes first. There are 5 birds, so I'm going to mark just a little 5 under here. And reptiles, oops, I made a mistake. Let's erase that. Okay. How many fewer birds than reptiles are there? So, sorry, there are 4 birds. So I'm going to mark a little 4 by my birds to help me remember. And there are 5 reptiles. So I need to figure out how many fewer reptiles. This is a pretty easy subtraction problem. 5 minus 4 will tell me how many fewer there are. There is 1 fewer, or 1 less birds than reptiles. Now, you can go back and ask more questions by writing them down and solving them, but I'm going to ask you one more question, then we're going to talk about our problem set and exit ticket. So how would this graph change if we added 4 more to the bird category? So when we look back at our graph, I'm just thinking, how would this change if we added 4 more to the bird category? I would just color in 4 more boxes, so it would be equal with the mammal category. So I could take my pen and I could just say, okay, 4 more birds. This is not the best drawing. It's hard to draw on a computer, but I would kind of just color that in right there if we added 4 more birds. So our chart would just look a little bit different. Okay, now to talk about our problem set and exit ticket for the day. You guys should be pretty good with these right by now because they're really similar to the problem set and exit ticket from yesterday. A lot of people yesterday almost looked like bar graphs when you were completing your picture graph. Some of you didn't use exact circles, so make sure that there is a difference between a bar graph and a picture graph. For a bar graph, the bars should be filled in all the way, and for a picture graph, you should have some sort of picture to represent each animal. So just make sure when you're working in the future that yours look like that. All right, so here's the bar graph problem. It says, complete the bar graph below using the data provided in the table, then answer the questions. So here's your table. Something I noticed yesterday was not everyone created their key and wrote the title, so please be careful. Make sure you write your title today, animal classification. Make sure you write your categories and make sure you create your scale. Remember the scale today is 1, so you should just be counting by 1s on the bottom here. So you're going to create your graph using this data and then you're going to answer the questions about it. Now, number 2 is pretty much exactly the same, except instead of having a data chart with numbers, we have tally marks. But I still want you to have a title. Down here is where your categories go because the scale is already here. So we're counting by 1 from 0 to 14. Here is where your habitats go: desert, Arctic, grassland. This bar graph is going to go up. This is a vertical bar graph. It is different than the horizontal ones that we've been creating today. And then just answer the questions. And your exit ticket is just like what we've been working on. You're going to create a bar graph. Make sure you create your scale and answer just 2 questions. You guys got this. Have fun today and remember to always reach out if you have any questions.